Or burn.
Yeah.
Let's go, dude. I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
So, man, this is the Charismatic Cheetah Podcast, exploring continuationism, the spiritual gifts, and the supernatural through a biblical lens. Now, anyone that's been following me or watching me for a while or whatever on Facebook or on YouTube, you know that I'm really into the Nephilim. You know that I'm really into the fringe topics and stuff like that. As you should be. Absolutely, man.
Every Christian should be obsessed with them.
I agree. I totally agree with you on that. But you just watched the trailer to my friend Cayton McDonald's new book that's coming out or came out already, actually. Babylon Games.
First book in a
Rise of the
trilogy.
Gods. Yeah. First out of the trilogy, man. So, man, he's also known as the Meadow Bible Podcast. And the reason this is full circle for me is because, I don't know, a year and a half ago or more maybe, I actually went.
I think it was exactly a year ago.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool, man. Yeah, dude. So like, I did a face reveal on his podcast, on his show. And he was like the first podcast. I was like so nervous and like I was like I don't know what to do. I thought it was gonna be this big production. I found out I was like, dude, it's really not that big a deal. Like we shot it and it was great. People liked it.
I know we didn't even get to use the video.
I knew, yeah, we didn't get to, yeah. But man, I don't know. It planted that seed, that germ, and it was like, man, like I could do that. This is something that I've been wanting to do. And so anyway, man, it's good to have you on the Meadow Bible Podcast, or Cayton. I don't know what to call you anymore, dude, honestly.
You can call me Cayton. It's okay.
Cool. So, man, just introduce everyone to who you are and what you do, man. And yeah, what's up, dude?
Well, yeah, like you said, my name is Cayton McDonald, and I run the Meadow Bible Podcast. I've been a podcast for about a year now. Kind of started out just as the Meadow Bible, and then kind of moved to a podcast. And I'm somebody that I grew up in the church, left the church, and became an atheist. I left Bible college, actually, a drug addicted atheist.
Wow.
Got kicked out of Bible college twice. That's my claim to fame. And now I like to teach the Bible. But God kind of guided me through, through my life and through a lot of self-inflicted circumstances most of the time, in which I was just kind of an idiot, like most
Same.
of us are.
Same.
And God has slowly brought me back. The very first episode I did was an episode about my grandmother, and her story and how it kind of brought me full circle back to God. Just really quickly, it's actually in the book as the backstory of the main character.
I was about to say, yeah.
Yeah, and actually my grandmother's name is Margie, and that's the name of the character, and my grandfather's name was Leonard. I actually have his middle name. My name is Cayton Ray, and his was Leonard Ray.
Did you murder him?
No, that's the only difference. But I almost did. Did. I really almost did, because over the span, my grandfather was he was a pastor in a small town called Borger, Texas. And he was a very evil man behind the scenes. Everybody loved him in that city. He knew everybody in the Tri-County area by name. Literally, I remember going to the grocery store to be like, oh, hey, so-and-so, how's blah, blah, blah. I mean, he was a really good people person out in public, but behind closed doors, he was very evil. He cheated on my grandmother with like 17 different women. And oh, by the way, I have Tourette syndrome. I forgot to mention that.
Do we need to cast a demon out of you for that?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've got the Tourette's demons. Actually, I got the Ritalin demon, is what that was. That brought it out of me whenever I was in like third grade. But anyways, so my grandmother broke her hip, and for over the span of 3 years, my grandfather slowly tortured her to death. Now, he actually ended up dying about a month before she did. His stomach literally ruptured inside of him, and he died in the home while she was there stuck in the bed. But he left her in a room 24/7 with no lights, no electricity, no TV, no clothes, barely feeding. I mean, she weighed like 70 pounds when she was found. She was found alive, but her fingernails were like this long, or her hair was in dreadlocks. Her muscles had atrophied so badly. I mean, I've never seen a person this crippled. She would literally she was always sitting on her own feet because her legs had atrophied back so badly that they couldn't move, and she was just in just agonizing pain. But he died alone and in horrible circumstances that are gross, and she died with loved ones surrounding her. And so sorry, it makes me every time I talk about it, it really works me up. But because it was the most difficult time of my life by far. She was my absolute favorite person on planet Earth. And her faith through that is actually what brought me back to God. Because even through all of that, I remember asking her, because we kind of knew we knew that he was bad, but we didn't know the extent of it behind the scenes. And I remember asking her in the hospital, and she was barely conscious, but she had a moment of clarity. And I asked her, I said, Nana, why didn't you tell us that he was doing this to you? And she said, because I didn't want you to hate him. And that was so true. Because she was right. I hated him. I drank every day and smoked weed every day, didn't get off the couch basically for a year, just in depressed. I mean, I experienced some of the most demonic things in my life during that time. And you go listen to that first episode, I go into more of that. But that is the core of why and a lot of people look at that and they're like, how could that possibly be what brought you back? I mean, a supposed man of God, and God allowing for this woman to be literally tortured to death over the span of 3 years. I mean, how is that possible? And the reason is because if you were to tell my grandmother that it would cause me to come back to God, would she go through that willingly? I can guarantee you that she would have said, "Bring it again. Let's do 10 years." Wow. That's just the kind of person she was. That's just the kind of faith that she had, and that brought me. I mean, eventually, it took me a year to finally forgive him. And
only a year? Wow.
Yeah, only a year. Yeah, it took me a year. And I'm not kidding you. There was demonic things that I experienced that I go into in that episode that are terror. To this day, I think back on it, I'm like, oh my goodness, actual demonic things happening in real life. And I knew that the enemy had power over me. And then I finally realized that forgiveness was not for him. Yep. Now, he's dead, right? Yep. Even if he was alive, it would have affected him none. Right. Forgiveness is for us. Yep. That's why we're told to forgive people. And forgiving doesn't mean that you forget that if you have toxic people in your life, that you just go back to them. It means that you no longer hold that over them and against them. You have let it go, and you have allowed God to replace that. And that's what forgiveness is. And that moment, I remember that moment. I was in the shower, of all places, and it just hit me. And I was like, it was just like God was literally like, forgive him. Wow. And I broke down crying, and I remember the freeing feeling that I had. And from then on, I haven't been perfect by any means. Same. I'm an awful, horrible person, but that's why I need Jesus, right? Yeah. Amen. And I make mistakes all the time, but that's what brought me back to God. And I started teaching in a church, started teaching apologetics to the youth. Taught for 3 years at this church. I teach at camps. I love teaching. God has given me the ability to teach. And that's kind of why I started the podcast at first, was to kind of do that. But
That's why I started. That's exactly why I started. Yeah.
But God in his supreme knowledge has really kind of guided me to this. I actually started writing the book about 2 years ago. I wrote 3 chapters, and then I had writer's block for 2 years. I could not do it. I'd sit down and I'd just be like, I just can't. And all of a sudden one day, I got really inspired. I don't remember what inspired me. But I sat down and I just started typing. And I'm like, I wrote most of this book in 3 days.
Nice.
I mean, my kids and my wife were gone a lot for that time. And so I was just constantly writing. And, I probably worked, it's like 100,000 word book. I wrote like 60,000 words in 1 day or in 3 days. Just a bit. And then, it took me 6 months to to finalize it and make it good. But, the point of the book for me, I like to, let me just give a kind of a premise of the book to start. Yeah. The book is set in the year 2040 for most of it. And it's basically, I like to say, it's a futuristic version of the book of Revelation. And if you take that and you kind of mix it with the book or the movie Ready Player One, all right, with the society that is enthralled in the virtual world and the AI and all of that stuff. So I'd always thought about excuse me. I always thought about the verse in the Bible that it's kind of a weird verse. It says where Paul is talking about Jesus, and he says that the idea that Jesus would be crucified and resurrected is, obviously paraphrasing, is not found in the Old Testament. That's why the disciples, until Jesus resurrected, they thought he was, actually, until he died, they thought he was going to save them from Rome. They thought that he was going to be a military figure because that was what everybody thought. And so I thought, and Paul says, the reason it was that way was because if the enemy knew that was the plan, they wouldn't have done it. Yep. And that's why, like Dr. Heiser says that Satan, when he's tempting Jesus, he's actually prying for information. He's trying to find, like, why are you here? I want to know. Yeah. And so his first thought is, okay, I got to kill this guy. Well, little did he know that was exactly the plan. Yeah. So if you take that thought and you think about the book of Revelation, why would that not also be true? Yeah. People talk about eschatology, and you've got all the different kind of systems for believing eschatology. What if all of us are wrong?
Probably are, honestly.
Honestly, I can guarantee you there's not one person that has it 100% correct. And I know there are people that say, well, no, I know for a fact. No, you don't. Because if you do, that would mean the enemy would know. And all he had to do is just not do those things.
Exactly, yeah.
It's that simple, right? And some people say, well, no, Satan is just too prideful. He'll do it anyway. No, he's a very intelligent being, whether you like it or not. Like, he's extremely intelligent. He is more advanced than you are. Right? He's had thousands and thousands of years to kind of form his plan. And so what if everything that we were taught about the book of Revelation, everything that we think that we know, what if if you look at the book of Revelation and you say, I know what this means, you haven't read it very well.
Well, usually cult leaders think they know it perfectly.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. They think that they've got it down. And so in this book, the main character is named Daniel Davis, and he is his grandmother has the same story as my grandmother, except he kills her. It's not a big reveal. It's in the very first. It's in the prologue.
I think he murdered her grandpa, bro. I'm convinced.
I almost did one time. My dad stopped me from beating the crap out of him, but that's another story. So Daniel is he leaves the faith, he becomes an atheist, and he becomes like a programmer, and he creates this system that they call the beast system. So the beast system, it stands for biometric evaluation and surveillance technology. And it is a whole encompassing world that, the whole world is run by this thing. And it's like, if you take social media, video games, I mean, it's kind of like the Ready Player One thing, where it is an all-encompassing world that people do business in, they live in, they play games in, they do all, basically whatever they want. And they actually have the technology, basically kind of like Elon Musk's Neuralink, what it'll be like 20 years from now, where they're able to have like a brain implant, like a neural implant, that allows them to actually experience kind of an augmented reality, where even their version of like Google Maps shows him direction. He sees it through his eye. And so as he's walking, it's showing him where to go, and everything that he needs to do. It's reminding him, it's checking his blood pressure, his health information. I mean, it even monitors the dreams that he has to make sure that they are approved for the social credit system that they have. And advertise it.
The part that I like, you just, like the advertising in the dreams. I was like,
they're able to advertise within the dreams. Which is, I mean, our society would definitely
not
do
far-fetched
that.
at all.
Yeah, it's not far-fetched in any capacity. And so, as they're walking around, the billboards will change and look, one person will see one thing on the billboard, another person will see another thing, and it's catered directly to the individual person. A lot of people don't realize that technology already exists. It's called parallel reality. And in the Detroit airport, they actually had that, where you can see your personal flight information and the person with you will see their own information, and everybody else sees all their own stuff. So that already exists. Crazy. This is just that 20 years into the future, and it's everything for everybody. All right, so AI has come to a point to where everything is a lot more advanced. And if anybody that knows anything about AI, has worked with AI over the past 2 years, it is exponential in growth. Yeah. I mean, every single time, because I make music on my podcast, I make my own metal music and stuff like that. Every time that I've gone to make a video for it, I am shocked at how much better the quality is, because I make a song every 3 to 4 months or so, and that video that you just watched, that is an AI that it took me about 5 hours to make that video using AI platforms, and it looks like a movie.
Yeah,
I mean, we're probably a year away. Like, honestly, if I took the time, I could probably make a short film out of it now.
Absolutely.
Because the technology already exists. And I'm right now, all of that stuff, that's just the free version stuff. That's not the paid version. Like, I worked for a company. The last company I worked for, I was helping them kind of integrate some AI into their platform. And the corporate level stuff that they have that they pay for is creepy. Like, I was making training videos, and all we had to do, we used like ChatGPT to make a script, and then have somebody approve the script, and then I would put it into the system, and it would actually take the CEO's face and voice and make it. And you could not tell the difference at all. It is terrifying. Okay. Yeah. And that's what we have now. Okay. Yeah, and every 3 or 4 months, like with technology, I forget what the principle is called, but there's a principle for technology, how it doubles every like 18 months. With AI, it's like every 4 to 6 months that the technology is doubling, which means in 20 years or 15, gosh, 2025, in 15 years, that is going to be at an insane level that is indistinguishable between reality. And that's kind of the premise for the beast system. Okay. So the beast system plays a big role in it. Because it's like a dystopian kind of 1984 on crack kind of thing. Heck yeah. And the leader of the company, the person that owns the company, called Squires Industries, his name is Merrick Squires, M-A-R-A-K. And he is a shady figure. He's the Antichrist figure. And if you put Merrick Squires into like Jewish gematria, it comes out as 666. That's how it kind of.
Oh wow, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah.
So, well, there's a lot of that kind of stuff in here where there's little Easter eggs all throughout this.
That's
like
cool.
Daniel is named Daniel, and he has a lot of dreams, right?
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of that kind of stuff, and every character within this book. Every main character is very personal to me. A lot of them are based on real people. There's a character whose name is John Watts, and John Waters, that
I was wondering, dude. Honestly, as soon as I saw that name, I was like, "Is that John Waters?"
Yeah,
that's awesome. Bro.
He's 6'8".
Love it. Yeah,
and he's big.
Man, that's funny.
And he tragically died a few years ago.
Yeah. And
I wanted to kind of put him in my story. He's kind of
that's cool, man.
He's not a main character. He's kind of a side character, but he's very important, very very important to the story. We used to call him J Watt, and there's actually a chapter. It's called Operation J Watts in the book. So people that know me personally know there's a lot of funny things with the names in there.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so, I made this very, very personal and very connected to this book in a lot of ways. And, I think that was why it was so easy for me to really kind of write. So, Daniel starts to kind of question the system. The very first chapter of the book, after the prologue, an entity of aliens come and interrupt a presidential broadcast, and they reveal themselves as they are the reason why we exist. They are the reason why all the religions exist, that no religion is wrong, that they're all right in their own way. They just misinterpreted. I mean, it's kind of like the ancient aliens bullcrap that goes on. Yeah. And they so, excuse me. They come and they interrupt the broadcast, and Daniel starts to he's immediately like, this doesn't feel right, because the way that they kind of enter is like, it reminds him of like sleep paralysis, because they're in the beast system watching this, and they can't move while this entity is talking. They're frozen. And I don't know if anybody's ever experienced sleep paralysis. It's extremely demonic. Yeah. I mean, the most demonic thing I ever experienced that I mentioned earlier is it was sleep paralysis that was confirmed outside by my wife at a later time. It's really creepy, but and so that's why I kind of put the that in there, because they they're not gods, right? They're the false gods. And, that's why this is called Rise of the Gods, because they come and they say, okay, we want an ambassador that is going to be a liaison between your world and ours. And so you need to find somebody that's a world leader, an ambassador, and that they say that this person is actually going to they're going to be given the DNA from the race is called the Gilgam, right? And that comes from Gilgamesh. Yeah. And so they want this one character, who is Merrick Squires, to kind of be that bridge in the gap. So then they move on, and they start building this big Colosseum. Now he wants Daniel's in charge of this big Colosseum. It's a big technological, futuristic Colosseum where it's unsure what's going to happen at first. In these, it's not really revealed. He just kind of wants it to be like this big showing, to where he can accept the ambassadorship and then do some other things. So later on, kind of is revealed that it's the Babylon Games, where the title of the trilogy comes from, are going to be held there, and this is where Christians or anybody who refuses to comply, they're non-compliant. They're called non-compliant. and they are taken to these games, and they are killed. But it's not. It's kind of like a Roman Colosseum, but with a lot of futuristic stuff involved. There's these android kind of AI gladiators that are there, and the people within the beast system are actually able to control these things and actually be a part of the games and personally be responsible for killing these Christians.
Wow.
And so, and they have no chance at all in it. They're just being slaughtered and slaughtered and slaughtered for refusing to basically kind of bow down and worship these gods and the ultimate god, the ambassador Merrick, right? Who claims himself to be God. He actually starts developing these actual superhuman kind of powers because he has been given the DNA from these entities. And that's where
he's like an antichrist. So not like, people think of antichrist, they think of anti-Christ, but it's actually alongside
instead of Christ, right? Yeah.
So he's kind of a mediator between the gods and man. And now, okay, cool.
Right.
I like that. Yeah.
So he is, because I wanted to think about these things differently, like the Left Behind series and all that stuff growing up. I cringe every time I look back, and I'm like, oh, I liked these things. And so the my mark of the beast, that's where that kind of comes in. My mark of the beast is not a barcode or cryptocurrency or all of the whatever. My mark of the beast, I wanted to think outside of the box with it. And so my mark of the beast comes with it's people receiving a small portion of the DNA of these entities, which actually causes them to be able to have life extension. He helps heal diseases, and they're able to have not the same level as like Merrick, but they're able to do some small kind of things, extra like superhuman kind of things. And so the idea is like, why wouldn't you want that? Like, why wouldn't you want that? Right? You can live longer. You can be healthy. You can have like these kind of superhuman things about you. You can kind of change yourself in ways that whatever way that you want to, and look however you want to. And that is the mark, right?
Right.
And and they also eventually are able to enter this thing which gives them a new body, right? And this is a new kind of this is where they integrate themselves with machines, where they get kind of like as Elon Musk, he's talked about how he wants to eventually download the consciousness of humans into some kind of machine to live forever.
Like transhumanism.
Right. And there's one part of the book of Revelation that always confused me, because it says that men will want to die, but they will not be capable of doing so.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people have said, well, God just kind of takes away death and they're not able to. And my view is more like, well, what if it's actually a more practical kind of thing to where they're not able to because of the nature of their new bodies.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they're able to download their consciousness into this. And that is where, that is why God says, if you do this, you cannot be saved. Mm-hmm. So, because like we talk about the Nephilim, I call them the new Nephilim in this. And it kind of gets discovered that they're looking to create a new race of Nephilim, and not like the giants of old, but like just humans that have integrated themselves willingly with the DNA. And that's why God shows up and says, nope. Because every time the Nephilim show up in the Bible, God comes, and that you see God super angry in the Bible. Yeah. The Nephilim are there.
Yeah, it's true.
He says that wipe out every man, woman, and child. He floods the earth, and it would make sense that in the most angry part of the Bible, the book of Revelation at the end, that this is also true. And so in the book, I don't really take a position on the rapture, and I did that on purpose. People can kind of insert it wherever they want if they want to. I'm unsure on the rapture altogether, so I didn't want to make a direct position on it. And I know some people are like upset because it's not pre-trib rapture or whatever.
Yeah.
Just assume that it happened before the book, okay? Just assume it happened right before, and people just don't talk about it or whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter, because that to me, people look forward to that like the most. Like that to me is, if that happens, great. But I'd rather prepare for if it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Or if it doesn't happen when I think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like somebody once told me, hope for a pre-trib rapture, but prepare for none.
Yeah. Prepare for no rapture. Yeah.
Prepare or post or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And so, this, I really wanted to create something new, and I kind of complained a little bit on my page about Christian entertainment being kind of lacking.
Yeah, agreed.
Because it is. Because I think a lot of the times the message is more important than the story itself, which the message is absolutely important. The gospel is important. I'm not saying that message is important, but when you make the sole point of it the message, then the story suffers.
Yeah.
And that's why you get Kirk Cameron as the bad guy saying, "Oh, this gosh darn thing," or I mean, that's just not how bad guys talk. They just don't, right? Bad guys say naughty words.
Yeah,
they do. And my book isn't like filled with naughty language. I think there's like 4 words, and all of those are in the Bible, so it's not like anything crazy. But I will tell you, like, I had a publisher that was kind of talking to me about maybe publishing, and then they told me that the book was too violent, which to me was like a badge of honor, because it's literally a book about games where Christians are killed in mass. How can I take out the violence? Like, you don't have
the Bible. The Bible in that case is too violent.
Right. The Bible is like the most violent book ever. Seriously. Yeah. I mean, within the first 6 chapters, it's extremely violent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so, that's kind of the premise of the book. There's a lot of twists and turns in it. You'll think it's going to go one way, and then it completely switches on, and then it switches back, and you're like, it kind of throws you for a loop. But, the book it's about 300 pages. For a normal read, it's probably about 12 hours total worth of reading. And like I sent you, I'm actually kind of going to pivot my podcast a little bit, because I still want to teach some, but I want to pivot to something that I don't see a lot of in Christian podcasting entertainment, because there's 4 million podcasts out there. I kind of want to separate myself from them. And I don't really know of any other than kind of Haunted Cosmos kind of does this at the beginning of their episodes, where they kind of tell a little bit of a story that's supposed to be like a real world paranormal story, and then they talk about it. Right. Well, mine is going to kind of pivot to telling these stories, and I'm going to turn this whole book into an audio version, and not just like it's not an audio book. It's more like an enhanced audio. It's like listening to a movie. Right?
It's really awesome. Like, you sent me the first part, which is what the first chapter and the basically the prologue.
Yeah, the prologue.
And man, I was blown away, dude. I was like, man, this is awesome. This is really cool, man. The sound effects, and it was just like, man.
And the irony is that I used AI to help me create this, even though it's a book about AI kind of taking over and stuff.
I love the irony. I love
it. Yeah. So, I mean, I really want to put my money where my mouth is. I don't want to just complain that there's not anything out there. I want to create something that's new and different. I want to be able to entertain people. And that's why I kind of made them like 30 minutes long. First of all, so I can make them fairly regularly, because it took me like a day and a half to make just 2 chapters. There's 52 chapters and two epilogues and 1 prologue. So at this rate, it's going to take me like a year to finish. But I'm going to be releasing the first episode of that probably this weekend. I'm thinking Sunday. And I'm really excited about this, because all of the feedback that I've gotten, because I tell people, like, look, even if you know who I am, I don't want you to just tell me that you like it if you actually you hate it, because that doesn't do me any good. Obviously my mom's like, this is the best thing ever.
Like, gotta love mama, man.
You're my mom. You're my mom.
Yeah.
But and of course my son, he's like, Dad, this is so cool. He's 11. So
no, your wife, if your wife's like mine, she'll tell you the truth.
Yeah, she will. Yeah. She hasn't listened to it yet. I'm going to have her listen to it and tell me the truth. But that's what I want. I want the truth. I don't want to be told. I don't want to be smoke blown, because I want to make something that is different, unique, and very entertaining. And, for 30 minutes of this, first of all, listen to it with headphones. It will greatly enhance your experience. Yeah. Because I did it with headphones in mind. Now you can still listen to it without, and it still sounds really good, but you miss some of the small little details that I meticulously put in there to kind of bring the story to life. Yeah. The final product, I could not be more happy with it. The book you can buy right now on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It's ebook, hardcover, and paperback. If you can't afford any of those, just on my Facebook page, Metal Bible Podcast, DM me. I'll send you a free audiobook. Like, I'm not trying to get super rich off this stuff. I want to share this story because I think it's important. Not only do I think it's important, I think it's relevant with all of the AI that we've got coming. Because I don't think people realize in the next 5 years how much our world is going to change. Like kids that are born right now will never know a world without AI in it. And that's weird because, I'm almost 40. I turned 40 this year. And, 30 years ago, I couldn't have even dreamed of this, right? I still thought that flying cars were going to be everywhere, and I thought that like the video phone was going to be the best thing ever. I've had a video phone, and I don't think I've ever used it. I mean, it's so important that Christians understand that we don't need to be scared of this technology. Just because AI will be used for something bad in the very near future, and it's probably being used for bad things now, doesn't mean we need to fear it. It is a tool that you can use that is a very, very useful tool. And if you don't use it, you will get behind. I mean, you just will, because that is where the world is heading. And if we don't encompass this and bring this into our lives and learn it, you're going to be left with like a deer in headlights. You're not going to know where it's going. No, you're going to be left behind. You've been left behind. Yeah. So yeah, I mean this book. It is good. Okay, it really is. I'm actually not a big reader. I listen to a lot of audiobooks, which is kind of why I am pivoting to that, because I can't. I'm so ADD that I can't focus on a book or even like on my screen. Like social media, honestly, I'm actually not on social media very much. I get on there for like maybe an hour and I set up a bunch of posts for the future. And then most of the time I'm spending time with my family. Right. And working and trying to create content. Because it takes a lot of time and effort. I know, it takes a lot of time and effort to create.
Tell me about it.
And it's my podcast, my page has grown quite a bit. I'm almost at 10,000 now. I'm thinking at just under 9,000 followers right now, which is
when I started following you had like 2,500, 3,000, something like that, and it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, I mean within the last year, I probably gained about 7,000 followers.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I started it December of last year, I believe it was, or I think it was December of last year. So it's only been around about a little over a year. But God has really kind of allowed for me a platform, because the most people I ever taught was probably 300. Yeah. And now I've got a much bigger platform. But I want to move towards telling stories that are interesting. Like I've got some ideas to kind of tell some stories like one of the things I want to do is I want to tell a story, basically kind of like the Book of Enoch or Genesis 6 from the view of one of the Watchers.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I like that.
And I might actually kind of use that as kind of like a prequel to this story, to the Metal Bible. I think I've kind of started writing the next book, and I think I'm going to kind of start from Genesis and kind of tell some first person views, kind of telling that story of Genesis 1 through 6 through the eyes of a watcher. Wow, and kind of tell all the way up to Babel, and kind of tell the Deuteronomy 32 worldview, the Heiser worldview, and kind of bring it to life as a story. Yeah. I've always wanted somebody to make movies about this kind of. I'm surprised there's no Nephilim movies. I mean, the Noah movie actually kind of tried to do Nephilim, but they were like rock monster angels, and
yeah,
and it was really stupid. I mean, I commend them for at least trying to add it, because like no Christian stories talk about this. Right. They just don't. You've got a few writers that do. There's Brian Godawa. He's got the Nephilim Chronicles and some other books that are actually pretty good. I highly suggest them. But as far as I'm aware, there's not really anybody that are telling stories like this. The story is brutal. It is violent. It just is. Because
but I mean, if you've ever read, I read Eusebius recently on his history of the church, and there were chapters in that book, and this is a history book written in the 4th century or so.
Yeah.
And I just like reading some of that stuff that the early church went through.
Yeah.
In the Colosseums, and I mean, they just did anything. I mean, I don't know, like they got creative with how they tortured Christians.
Yeah, I mean, Nero used them as candles for his parties.
Yeah,
that is like Western Christians have got to grow up and stop being scared of things, and stop being scared to talk about the bad guys, right? Because they're like, oh, why are you talking about Satan, or why are you talking about this so much? Well, because it's a part of the story, and it's a very large part, and I'm not scared of it. Why should I be? Like,
exactly.
Why should I be scared to tell this story, and to show the true evil of it? I mean, it is brutal. This story is brutal. Mm-hmm. It is overtly violent, but it's not like Saw or anything like that. Right, it's realistic, and the characters that you connect with. I mean, there's Daniel and his wife Sandra, and Sandra, her story is quite interesting because she's kind of like the one that goes along. Let's go along with the government. Let's go along with these entities, and Daniel's kind of opposed to it, and so there's like a divide there. And then there's a group that's the resistance. They're called the Way. And if anybody knows anything about the early church, that's what they called it. They called themselves the Way. And so that's kind of like John Watts he's kind of like the leader of the Way. And that's kind of his role.
That's cool.
And so they're kind of the resistance to all of this. And there's a lot of parallels to biblical stories in there. I don't want to give away too much, but there's some of the biblical stories, some of the most famous ones. Some of these people experience the same things as these people.
That's cool.
I wanted to kind of show, just for an example, there's a guy named Sam in the story, and he's got a very small part. It's basically this part where he kind of gets some Samson powers, right? And it's a really cool part it's a climactic part of the story, where he takes the jawbone of a lion and starts railing with it, even though I know it's a jawbone of the donkey. I just didn't want to take it direct from
yeah.
And he didn't have a donkey laying around. So, but I want people to be open and not just be closed, because I know when you talk about eschatology, you talk about rapture and all, people get really in their feelings over this stuff.
Yeah, seriously.
Okay, this is a fictional story that I would just want to tell, and because this is kind of my idea of how this could happen.
Right. Yeah.
And because I honestly would not be surprised if the government comes out and actually, I mean, they've already said that UFOs are real, which nobody cared about.
Yeah, no one cared.
Which is weird.
Yeah, no one cared.
Nobody cared. But it seems like every time that they do something they don't want us to see about, they start talking about aliens. You know?
Yeah.
So anytime the Biden administration would do something, like the Hunter Biden laptop came out and they started talking about UFOs.
It's true.
And, but, you know, it would not surprise me at all for them to come out and say, oh, well, this is real. Or it wouldn't surprise me for something like what happens in the prologue, something similar to actually happen, whether it actually happens or it's a deception of some kind.
Right.
Either way, I'm good with, right?
Yeah.
I think that's very plausible to kind of shape the end. And so I really hope that people like the story. I really think that you will. And again, if you can't afford it, please just DM me. I will just give you an ebook. That costs me nothing. So I'll give you an ebook, or you can just listen to the audio version. My goal is to release 2 a month at least. At some point, I'm going to try to open up kind of a subscription service so I can, because I have 2 jobs right now. And I would like to kind of replace one of them. And so I'd like to kind of maybe open up a subscription service at some point and offer people more behind the paywall, you know, more stories and stuff like that. Because I've got a ton of stories up here. I'm constantly just like thinking of new ideas. I've got like this whole list of different stories that I want to tell. Because I want to create, I mean, if we want to affect the culture, we have to create culture.
Yeah. Amen.
I mean, we have to, and we have to create culture that is digestible for somebody who's not a Christian. Because if you read this book, this book is a very Christian book, and I'm not ashamed to say it. But but the story is very engaging. You don't have to be a Christian to enjoy this story, because it's just interesting. It just is.
Yeah. Well, I think of like the Lord of the Rings. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan.
Yeah.
I listen to audio book every night to sleep. That's how much of a Lord of the Rings fan I am.
Oh yeah.
And there's so many people who aren't Christian. That's basically their like introduction into the gospel is this Roman Catholic dude, which I'm not Roman Catholic at all.
Right.
Yeah. You know, but still,
for good reason, right?
Very good reason. But the dude wrote just a brilliant.
He literally created a language and then was like, "I'm going to make a book around this."
Yeah, you know, like we need more Tolkiens, we need more Lewises.
Yeah,
you know,
and I'm nowhere near Tolkien. I don't even try to claim that I'm even close. But I can create. God has given me the ability to be creative.
Yeah,
and I want people to be able to be engaged with new kinds of media. Because there's a lot of trash out there. Yeah. You know, and I'm hoping that God will kind of open this up to kind of move forward and maybe create something bigger out of that. I mean, I'd love my if I had endless amounts of money, I would love to make like not really anime, but kind of like, have you ever seen the show Invincible?
I don't think so. I don't watch a lot of TV though.
Well, it's like a very violent. It's a cartoon, but it's a very violent, like superhero story.
Okay.
And I would love to make a biblical version, like stories from the Bible, out of that.
That'd be cool.
Right.
That'd be cool.
So the stuff that's realistic, because again, for some reason, Christians are scared. They think that they're sinning whenever they hear a bad word, or they think that they're sinning when they see violence. Right.
Yeah.
Jesus probably saw executions when he was very young.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. He most likely did. Yeah. I mean, when they went down to the temple and Jesus he stayed at the temple and his parents left, they probably saw some executions.
Yeah. No.
Because they were just constantly lining people up and crucifying them. Mm-hmm. Like, we've got to move past this fear that you're doing something wrong just because you've watched something. Like there are things that you can watch that are bad, obviously, right? There's no sexual things in my book, and I mean there is talk about it because it's a real world thing, but it's I don't go into any detail. There's no descriptions. There's nothing sinful at all about it. But people, we've got to grow up. We've got to look at the Bible in a grown up way and stop being scared of the Bible. The reason people are uncomfortable with the Nephilim is because that means the angels had sex.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness, how awful, right? and so, you know, like Dr. Hodger said, you don't need to be protected from your Bible.
Yeah,
you don't.
The weird stuff is there for a reason.
I remember at the church I was going to, we had a small group, and we were going through the book of Genesis, and I remember going through Genesis 6, and we just skipped right over 6:4, and I was just like, wait a second, that seems like that's important. Why aren't we talking about it? And they were like, no. And I was like, are you serious? You're skipping part of the Bible.
Right.
Like, how does that not make you uncomfortable? It's like when I was a cessationist, I used to just not ever read 1 Corinthians like 12 through 14 because I was like, what's the point? I mean, yeah, I can read about it but that happened a long time ago. And I haven't included any of the spiritual gifts yet, but I plan on in the next book to kind of incorporate that, because I think, honestly, for my view of eschatology, I guess I kind of line up with like the historical pre-mill, but I'm unsure about a rapture. That's kind of the closest that I could say. The more I study it, the less I know. That's so. I'm just like,
that's true.
I can't. So my view of eschatology is, you know, when things, even like with the early church, when persecution happens, people's faith rises, and that in itself is why these gifts are more they happen more, and they're more profound instead of just, oh, you know, I got healed of a headache or whatever. You know, I mean, I've experienced healing. I have instantly. I had a double ear infection. I had ulcerative colitis flare up going on in my stomach, and I went to the church. They prayed over me. I walked out and they were all gone. I mean, they were all gone. I've had a couple of small little problems since then. I had to go to the hospital, I think, once or twice because of that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that in that moment, God, I mean, it was gone.
Yeah.
And I was a cessationist. I was just a questioning cessationist at that point. I was like, I don't know, you know, maybe I entertained the idea, but after that, I was just like, then I started reading it, and it was like God had opened my eyes, and I was like, I'm reading this, and how have I not seen this before?
Right.
When I'm reading this, and Paul literally says, pursue all of the gifts, especially prophecy.
Especially prophecy.
That's one of those sign gifts. Why is he telling somebody to look for these sign gifts that are only for the apostles?
Yeah.
If they're only for the apostles, why is he telling people who are not apostles to seek after them?
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense to me. And that's, I mean, it's like, you know, I go to a cessationist church just because I haven't been able to find like a charismatic church around me that's close to me that is also doctrinally sound, because that's also the other side. Yeah, because you get a lot of I think it was R.T. Kendall. I remember reading one of his books, and he said that one of the things that he expects is that those two sides will merge, and you will actually find the true biblical church between both of them. Yeah. Because cessationists, you know, most of the time they're pretty doctrinally sound.
Very.
I mean, they just are, and I'm openly admit that. And then you go to some charismatic churches, and it's like they throw that out the window. Yeah. And that's a bigger problem than not believing in the gifts to me. Like doctrinally sound is number one, and then the gifts come after that. And if I can't find a church that is both, I will just take the doctrinally sound, right, outside of the gifts. And I can practice the gifts myself, or I can go to some other services here and there to kind of scratch that itch.
Well, you're not too far from you're in Burleson, so I'm in Cleburne. So if you ever want to come down to Cleburne, Pursuit Bible Church, that's my church. I've had my pastor Trinity on a few times. Come check us out, man. I love the church. Very much. I mean, we do a verse by verse expository preaching on Sundays, and we still believe in the gifts, and we don't practice them in church necessarily most of the time,
and that's perfectly fine.
But yeah. Anyway,
honestly, that like if you can't do it properly within the church, don't do it.
Exactly. Yep.
Right. I mean, one of the things that the church that I went at that was a continuationist church that I actually did like, there was a guy that stood up in the middle of the service while he was preaching and was speaking in tongues, and he kind of let the guy finish, and he was like, "Okay, I just want to let you know we don't do that here." And I was just like, "Oh, okay," like, because Paul tells us not to. He says that unless you have an interpreter, and so he said, for the sake of having an ordered service, we're not going to do that. Absolutely awesome. Now then, they started hanging out with people like Todd White and Bethel, and then after I left, I fought with God for a year because I loved those kids. I taught them. My class grew from like 6 or 7 to like 80 by the end, and they. It broke my heart to leave there. I fought with God for a year to leave that church. God. And after I left, not like 3 months afterwards, they invited Benny Hinn there. And I was just like, thank you, God. Because I was like, man, did I make the right decision? And then here comes Benny Hinn. And I was like, I made the absolute right. Because before, I went there for almost six years, I think it was. And from the time that I started, it was great. I didn't even know it was a continuationist church for like 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Right. Because it was just not something that they would kind of talk about it here and there. And I kind of would pick up on it, because if I knew that it was a continuationist church at first, I wouldn't have gone. I would have left, because I was staunch cessationist. I'm going to leave. I'm not doing this. And that was kind of God's guiding me through. And then they got really big. You know, the church is now like, I think it was like 6,000 members or something ridiculous like that. They got like 6 services that they do. And as they got big, they got on TV, and then all of that kind of changed. They started hanging out with the TV people and buddying up with Todd White. And, you know, Todd White is a bad actor, man. He is a fraud. He is a liar. He is a heretic. I don't say this about very many people. He is not saved. He is not, because and that's not me saying, that's the Bible says. He says that he is sinless, and John says that if you say that, the truth is not in you. Period.
Yep, it's true.
That's not me saying it. And like, I knew people that went to because his school is like 30 minutes away from here, and I had kids in my class whose parents went to that class. And I remember teaching on Todd. This is one of the reasons why I left that church. I remember teaching on Todd White and how he was bad, or how I didn't even say he was bad. I said the things that he was teaching were wrong. And afterwards, some parents came up and were chewing out the youth pastor, and the youth pastor is great. I'm still friends with him because he left after I did. He was like, "Can you show me in the Bible where he's wrong?" And they're like, "No, but I know him personally," and blah, blah, blah. And one of them actually said, "You know, we were actually supposed to bring Todd White's daughter to church here, and she was going to go to his class. How would she have responded? Like, she would have learned some truth about her dad." Yeah, it would have been good for her. It would be good because when you are close to someone like that, it's hard to see. I mean, because I'm sure he's a great, super nice, awesome, nice guy. I have no doubt about that. And I'm sure he feels like he's genuine. I'm sure he genuinely is probably convinced himself that what he is saying is the truth. And he tells people by playing music and crying while he talks. He's a very emotionally manipulative person. Anytime somebody puts on the music, and then, I mean, like the audio version of my book, like there's music, there's sound effects, because I want you to have an emotional response to it. That's why I did it. That way. No, exactly. And that's why people do that. It's okay to have music and talk. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but that's the only way that he talks. Yeah. He will not talk without those synths going on behind him and having emotional because he wants you to have an emotional experience. And that's a big problem in the charismatic world is you get an emotional experience as opposed to a genuine. I mean, I've had genuine spiritual gift experiences. My gift of tongues experiences was life-changing. I've only ever spoken tongues like 5 times in my life, and each time was profound.
Interesting.
the very first time, because it's not something that you just do, and that's the problem. Is charismatics a lot of the time will just fake it.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like I could not do what was coming out of my mouth. I could not replicate it. Wow. Because it and like while it was happening, I was like trying to disprove it. I'm trying to do complicated math in my head because I'm very analytical, and I was like, there's no way this is real. I've got to disprove this, and trying to do complicated math and speak gibberish, right?
Yeah.
It was profound, and I was by myself. I was in my car by myself.
Right.
When that happened, it wasn't this big crowd event and all this kind of stuff. And earlier that day, I went to a Bible study and they prayed over me, did the baptism of the Spirit thing, which I don't even know if I technically believe that. I'm still unsure. I don't really care either way. I've heard both sides, and it just doesn't. I don't care. It could be or couldn't be, but it just so happened that day that they did that. Nothing happened when he did it. But then later that evening, I was driving back home, taking a friend home for Thanksgiving, and the most profound experience of my life. It lasted for like 10 minutes, and I was just sobbing. And my wife, she was not a cessationist, and I actually remember making fun of her for talking about speaking in tongues. And let me tell you, I don't like telling my wife that I was wrong. Ever.
Yeah, right.
And I came in and I was sobbing. She was like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I was like, "I was wrong. I was stupid." And honestly, that was the most humbling experience, to come to God and just to say, I was wrong. I was arrogant. I made fun of people. I remember in high school, doing a skit where it was called The Way We Pray. And my job was to make fun of people that spoke in tongues. And I was in high school. I remember it. And we did that skit like all over the place, these different camps and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's why God was like, God
has a sense of humor.
He definitely does. He definitely does. But yeah, I know we're getting over here on over an hour now. I told you I could talk for forever.
No, that's fine, man. So I just wanted to, but yeah, I'm here in this minute. I want to ask you maybe some closing thoughts or whatever, and also where to find you and all that good stuff. But I wanted to just say something too myself. Quite frankly, my expectations are never very high when someone online reaches out to me and said, "Hey man, check my book out," or whatever,
I know, man. I know.
And so
a lot of people do it.
It's like, okay, cool. And I've actually, Max Sternberg actually surprised me with his books, but and I was reading yours because I was trying to prepare for the show. I admit I only read like half the first chapter, and I was like, I needed to get into it, but I like paperback books. That's what I like. So, but then he sent me that audio last night, and I'm sitting there listening to it with my cat on my lap, and I was just like, holy crap, dude, this is good, man. So I got really excited about it. I think you touched on how like Christians, we need to grow up. Like it's in media, it's like either we get Christian fluff and it's just like, I don't know. It's like sugary.
It's like sweet. Hallmark Channel, but worse. Yeah.
Or I gotta get on Netflix and watch the woke, demonic,
right. Stuff, Game of Thrones, nasty crap.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, and so we need good media like this, man. So where can people find you? Or just some closing remarks, maybe, and also where can people find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook. That's primarily where I do most of my stuff. I'm going to eventually branch out to X and stuff like that. I haven't had enough time to do it. I don't get a lot of time because I work 2 jobs and have a family. But yeah, so Facebook, Middle Bible 1711. 1711 is Acts 17:11. That's the Berean passage, and that's what this tattoo is. It's Cayton the Berean in Greek. So nice. Yeah, so you can find me there. You can find me on all podcast platforms. I have about 6 or 7 episodes up. Just real quick, like I said, I work 2 jobs. My second job is in the spring and summertime. I have to work a lot, to work like 6-7 days a week. I don't have a choice. I have to at this point. So the content kind of slows down a little bit during that time. I'm going to try to not do that with the audio and the audiobook stuff going forward, because I really enjoy creating it. And I think that it's important. But you can find the book on Amazon, like I said, and Barnes and Noble. Again, free. I'm not even going to ask you to prove that you can't afford it. I don't care. It's your word. I'll take you at your word. I will give you this book for free. If you want to support me, great. The audio book is going to be, the first episode is done. It's finished. I'm letting some of the people that have already bought the book, I'm letting them kind of hear it first, because I don't want to screw the people over that have bought the book.
Yeah.
Because, it's going to take, it's probably going to take me a year to finish the whole book at this rate, because I've only done 2 chapters out of like 55 total. So yeah, so you can find that there. Facebook. If you ever have any questions or anything, comments, I don't really ever get to see a lot of the comments. I don't get a lot of time to read comments. You direct message me. I answer all my direct messages eventually. Sometimes it may take me a few days, but I'll sit down and I'll go through all of them and answer everybody. And I get questions all the time. People have questions, and I teach apologetics. I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to continue to do some interviews. I'm interviewing Phil Dozer, the guy from Phil Dozer, he's got a motorcycle ministry that he's kind of started. I'm interviewing him on Saturday. I'll probably release that maybe Monday or something like that. So yeah, just give this first episode a chance. I promise you're going to like it. It is genuinely.
Me too.
I put a lot of effort into this because I wanted to create a quality product, and it is genuinely entertaining. It's only 30 minutes. You can, on your ride to work.
Yeah. On
your ride to work, especially if you're in Texas, you probably got a 45-minute drive.
I got an hour drive. Yeah.
Yeah. So just listen to it. Headphones are preferred, but I really want to create something original and new. I don't want to just be, I'm not trying to be offensive. I don't want to be just another podcast. I want it to be something different. And you got your niche, you got the charismatic, that kind of stuff, which, there's a few of them out there, but I enjoy your podcast. I've listened to a few of your episodes. They're good. You're very knowledgeable. I still think that me and you need to sit down and debate some cessationists.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
It should be super easy to do since they can't read their Bible.
The Bible, that's all I gotta do.
That's what I said. I said I wanted to make a continuationist movie and just read 1 Corinthians 12 through 14 and then be done. Because in cessationists, they didn't mention like biblical passages for continuation like at all. And the guy that runs the cessationist movie page needs to repent because he does. Yeah. He is extremely he blocked me before the movie came out. Because I predicted exactly what he would do. Maybe one might call it a prophecy. No, just kidding. I said you're going to not have any prominent continuation that's on there. If you talk about any of them, it's gonna be like Todd White, Bethel, Chris Valaton, all of those bad actors that even continuationists will look at and go, no, that's bad. Yeah. And you won't argue against any of the actual arguments that continuationists make. It's all straw man arguments all of the time. Well, why do you have glasses? Why don't you go and heal everybody in a hospital? Because it's not up to me. Right. I don't decide when somebody gets healed. Yep. The apostles didn't decide when. That's why Trophimus wasn't healed. You're going to tell me that Trophimus was with Paul all of that time, and Paul was just like, I could heal you, I just don't want to. Or Timothy, the guy that he said was his spiritual son. I just don't want to. Just drink some wine and you'll be okay. Yeah. They'll say, well, that means that the gifts were fading at that time. Then why did Paul heal an entire island as the last thing that he did? Yep. Right. So, there's just so much stuff. But yeah, so thank you so much for having me come on. I told you I'd talk a lot.
Very good. Made my job easy.
We went over an hour. I will talk. If I am confident about a subject, I could talk for days. Yeah, right? That's why my Nephilim episode, other than the one I did with you, was 3 hours long. Yeah. It was 3.5 hours long. It was 2 parts, 3.5 hours long with the people over at the Christian Theological Dark Web. They're also a good podcast. And man, we went through we could have talked for probably another 3 hours. I'm not kidding. There's so much to it. But one of the if you guys have listened to Dr. Heiser and you like Dr. Heiser, you will like this book because he is a huge inspiration. His book that he wrote 2 fictional books. One's called The Portent, and the other one is, I don't remember what it was called. That's the first one. That's actually the only one that I actually read because it was the only audio book that he had. And yeah. I took some inspiration from him as well. His whole Deuteronomy 32 worldview with the gods and all that. That is this book. Like that is this book come alive, yeah. But in the future where these gods have kind of returned as a different kind of entity. And I really think you guys will like it. The book is it's good, and I know I wrote it, and I'm just saying that because I wrote it. But I promise you, if I wrote something that was crap, I would throw it away.
Yeah, right.
Because I'm very critical of myself. I'm very diligent in what I do. But the audio version, I'm telling you, give it 1 episode, and by the end you will be hooked. I promise you, because that cliffhanger. The cliffhanger at the end of it, man, like you're just like, what happens?
Yeah. And
I'll tell you, if you think that's crazy, the rest of the book is like way crazier. So yeah. So again, thanks for having me come on again. I'm the Metal Bible Podcast. My name's Cayton McDonald. The book is Babylon Games: Rise of the Gods. Check me out on Facebook.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. Again, go check out the book. I'm fully endorsing and fully with Cayton on this. I've listened, and I'm pretty picky too. Go check it out. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please comment, like, all that good stuff. Share this with people. And Cayton, later, bro.
See you later, man. Thanks a lot.